Can you send him a message?
Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rob with technical difficulties.
I'm Joan. We're having technical difficulties with our guests, so you're going to have to bear with me while Rob texts him. Let us go to the comments first. Joe Conjal says, hi, Rob and Joan. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. And Paul Hollis says, good evening, Rob and Joan. Good evening, Paul. I'm really glad that you're here. Whether you're watching us live and seeing all our technical difficulties, or if you're listening to us on the podcast, I'm not flustered at all.
We're here.
We're really glad that you decided to join our show. And you need to text him to put on his headphones. He still doesn't.
Yes, I hear and see you. Okay.
Okay.
You can hear us. We'll be able to bring
all
it
right.
on then.
We'll be able to continue on then.
Okay, that's good. Good news. Okay. Whew, we're going to have a show, guys.
It was a little bit of a rough start.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to catch up on the...
Marjorie Daring says, hi, happy Wednesday. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's happy.
And George Dismuke says, okay, I'm strapped into the astronaut's chair, ready for countdown. Oh, wait, this is a dentist chair, and here she comes with a needle. Hey. Lonnie Becca Jones says, hello, you two, or Becca, whichever one or both of you is watching. We're really
Lonnie.
Glad that you're here. That's what I just said.
Oh, okay.
Do any of you women have this problem where your husband doesn't listen to you?
What? Okay. On that note, we shall get started.
All right.
Good idea, right?
Yes.
Okay. Voice of Indie podcast immediately following our show tonight, Beam Weeks and Gary G's. At the end of the show, there is a little video that tells you how to get over to that podcast. Tonight's guest is Kyler Merrill. He's a webcomic creator.
And last week, it was George Smukes.
It was. And then this Saturday is episode rewind and CJ Peterson's episode, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., right here. Speaking of CJ Peterson, she and Mike Clifton host the Book World, The Great Escape podcast, 1 o'clock Central Time on Wednesdays here in the U.S. Go to YouTube at CJ Peterson for more info. Next week, we have Paul Rushworth Brown as our guest again, live from Australia.
Cool.
Historical fiction author. And then also on the 15th, next Wednesday, Haunted Campfire Tales podcast. And our subject the panel will be discussing pet hauntings. That's at 7:30 p.m. Go to the Tampa Bay Spirits Facebook page, and you'll find out the information on that. In the news also on June 15th is Paul Hollis's audiobook pre-launch party. That's tomorrow night also, and that's just before our show. So it's 7:00. Hop in there to Paul's party and enter the contest, and then come on over and watch Tampa Bay Spirits
Paranormal podcast.
Haunted Campfire Tales.
Yep.
Paul Hollis has a Zoom link for it on his pinned Facebook page. Pinned to his Facebook page, I should say. Sheesh. And also want to announce that the Magnolia Bluff edition, which is Men Lying Dead in a Field by Richard Schwent. I can't talk either.
Great title.
Yep. It's releasing on the 20th, which is later this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or first next week. That's book 14 in the series. It's available now for pre-order.
So Lonnie Becca Jones says, both of us, haha. And then George DeSmuke says, I'll be on CJ's show next Wednesday.
It's hard to keep up with all this. This is
and
like musical
George
podcasts.
was on Stephen Beam's show. Well, Gary. He's Gary Steve. It's the long thing. Okay. Paul Hollis says, wait, I thought Tampa Bay Spirits was next week. How did I screw that up? You didn't screw it up.
No.
It's usually on the last Thursday of every month. But this time it's going to be tomorrow, the 15th, because we leave on our trip where we're going to go to Texas and do book signings with maybe Lonnie and Becca Jones. Well, Becca Jones anyway. I don't know if she's decided to come or not, but I think so. George will be there, and
pretty much sure.
So it's going to be fun, and that will be a live show that night. But unfortunately, because we're going to be on the road traveling there, because we're taking our trailer.
C.W. Hawes is planning on joining us also.
Oh, that'll be fun.
But he'll probably be on by video.
Okay.
On our video link, because a few health problems.
Oh.
So. But that's okay, Paul. Let's encourage everyone to go ahead and stay for all of Paul's party. That's fine. We're very long-winded. Our panel is very long-winded, so we usually go almost 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours.
It really does, you guys.
It really does. And you can always watch the replay on it too. So don't spoil Paul's party.
Yeah. Becca says, yes, I will be there. Great news. Paul Hollis says, dang, so sorry. Don't be sorry. It's not your fault. We are usually the last Thursday of every month. You can't plan your life around our podcast, Paul. We don't expect you to.
No. So,
without further ado.
With all that, do you want to introduce Mr. Kaplan?
Yes. So, here we go, folks. Our guest tonight is Howard Kaplan. He's lived in Israel and traveled extensively through Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt. At the age of 21, he was sent on a mission into the Soviet Union to smuggle a dissident's manuscript on microfilm to London. His first trip was a success. On his second trip, not so much. He got arrested, and the beginning of a great career writing thriller espionage stories began. So let's bring him on.
Hello, Howard.
Good afternoon. Good evening for you.
And you can hear us now.
I can hear you fine. I unplugged the microphone and unplugged the headphones and went right into the monitor, and it seems to be working.
Good.
Well, that's really good news.
I figured it was some kind of issue like that, so that's good. That's good. We got it solved anyway.
One more comment from Joe. It's a great show in time. He's talking about the paranormal podcast. It is. It's a lot of fun, and tomorrow's pet hauntings, which... Okay. Paul Hollis says, welcome, Howard.
Thank you so much.
And Joe Conchel said, wait, is he Paul Hollis's brother? LOL. You know what? That's what we were thinking when we were when we were reading all of what his books are about and everything. It's just like what Paul has written. Paul Hollis, who's in the audience, was a special agent, a field agent for the NSA. And his book series, The Hollow Man, is is all about that. So that's sort of like what got you started, Howard, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Whew. So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm in Los Angeles. My parents were Eastern European immigrants. I think I had a great sense that America took them in and gave a lot to them. They tried to give a lot back in terms of charitable contributions because they felt quite fortunate. And from that background, I wanted to write about communities in peril, people in trouble, in the hope that writing a thriller, which might have a larger audience than a nonfiction book, would illuminate some of the problems. And most recently, I've been concerned with the Syrians and the Syrian civil war.
Yeah.
The 500,000 people murdered there. We don't want to forget about them.
Absolutely. You're right. Well, let me bring up some of your books here so we can see them. There we go. So actually your first book, and I do want to talk about this for a lot of reasons, is Damascus Cover. You want to give us a little bit of an idea of what that's about without giving away any spoilers?
That book was a spy novel about an agent who goes into Damascus in Syria on a mission that he's not completely aware of. There's a secondary mission that he has to accomplish by failing, and nobody clues him in. And it has a big twist in the end. And I confess the twist wasn't planned. I was about 2/3 of the way through writing the book, and one character needed to have a conversation. So I needed to create another character for him to talk to. And suddenly within a day, I thought, whoa, you know what I could do here? And that put a twist at the end of the novel, which pretty much no one has ever seen coming. I saw the screen, there's a film adaptation, and we saw it with the head of the Motion Picture Academy of Arts and Sciences. The Oscar, well, it wasn't nominated for an Oscar, but she's the head of the Oscars. And she said, I didn't see that coming. And that may have contributed to the film being made many years after the book was published.
Yeah, so that came out in what, 2017, right?
The film came out in 2017. In fact, there's a kind of interesting story about one of the secondary stars is Sir John Hurt, the Oscar winner. I seem to be on the Oscar subject at the moment. Elephant Man, 1984. Long career. This was his last film. He had cancer. We didn't know it. Film was shot in Morocco. And you want to know how Hollywood works? One of the reasons he agreed to do the part is he had a house in Morocco. And he wanted to be flown to Morocco. And he told the director, because he has a small role, and what they do with the film is, it's not such a small role. They shoot all his scenes consecutively so that he doesn't have to stay that long. And they also this way can pay him a daily rate since he's an Oscar winning actor rather than his 7-figure, salary. And he said to the director, I'm arriving on Sunday. You can have me in wardrobe and I'll be leaving on Friday at 5 o'clock for my house. And you better be done with me because I'm going even if you aren't. And all things, they were done with him and he left. But the story I was going to tell was a little different. It has to do with the integrity of the person. Normal business in a film is after it's shot, they listen to the sound and they determine which scenes you don't hear well. Maybe there was traffic, maybe somebody missed the line, so they go back into the recording studio in London in this case, and they shoot, which is ADRs, which are additional dialogue replacement. So by this time, he was hospitalized for cancer, and he showed up to do the ADRs in the studio. He checked himself out of the hospital. Gives you a sense of the integrity. But when they went to match the stuff he recorded in the studio with what was shot in Morocco, they couldn't use the studio sound because his voice by then had deteriorated and it was gravelly and it just stood out too much.
Wow.
But it does tell you about some of these very big, great actors who care enough on their final moments of life. He wasn't dying, but he died some months thereafter, willing to work on a small film to try to make it the best possible film it could be. So I was very pleased. The film follows the spine of the novel, as the director used to say. I think the novel's a little clearer, the way novels already always are. But I'm happy to have the film nonetheless.
We have some questions for you. And sorry for the feedback, guys, but the headphones didn't work because he couldn't hear us at all. So we're going to have to live with it. So Joe Concha wants to know, are your books based on events from your life?
My novels are more historical fiction and less autobiographical. So the fact that I was arrested in Russia more inspired me to start to do research in some of these areas. So what I typically do is I move fictional characters through historical real events. This new novel, The Syrian Sunset, about the Syrian Civil War and how we let Putin run wild in Syria, which probably encouraged him to go into Ukraine because we didn't stand up to him. Almost everything that happens in the novel, from the beginning, which I'll read from later in the show, to all the prison camps and explosions and chemical weapons factories, are all accurate, but all the characters are made up. You know, everything that they go through, because that gives me more, to me, it gives me great flexibility because the characters can go anywhere and be as dramatic and as romantic as I might want to create. Yet the historical events they move through are limited by truth. I don't make up things. Obama's in the book, and the president of Syria, Assad, and how Bashar al-Assad played Nancy Pelosi at an earlier time. Those are all historical, accurate events.
Awesome. George said, see, it happened again. Characters go wherever the hell they want to go, huh, Howard?
Well, that's exactly kind of what happens. Although I taught writing at UCLA Extension, and so I have broken my own rule. And I used to, when I taught for a decade, tell people the place I want you to start is with the ending. You should know where you're going. This way, the characters can all move, even if, let's take George's comment, they go wherever they want, they're ending up, you know, like, I'll give it to you a different way. You're in Florida. We have the 10 freeway here that begins in Santa Monica. It ends in Jacksonville. Now, it goes through a lot of places across the country. The Interstate 10, which probably some of your listeners are familiar with, but we call it here the Santa Monica Freeway because it ends up at the ocean on the other side. So I like to know where, and recommend writers know where the characters are going to end up, because then whatever side tracks they may take, it brings them back to something that's a coherent story and not a random series of events.
Just tell the characters they won't get paid unless they show up at the end.
Joe Conchal said, is that what they call looping, going back to the reading of
the studio?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Talking about redoing the dialogue.
Oh, I'm not sure if that's if that's looping. I'm not a film person per se. Remember, I'm a novelist, but I know that, and I just don't know the answer to that. I know that when they re-record scenes, it's called, they call them ADRs, advanced audio dialogue replacement. In other words, you're recording in the studio to replace the dialogue in the shooting that didn't come out clearly. You know, they have the headphones I should have on, but I couldn't get them to work. Somebody says that's looping. Fair enough. You know, I've learned something too here today.
Yeah, George Dismukes says yes, that's looping. He's worked on a lot of movies.
Yes, I haven't. You know, this was the only film I was involved with, and it was a 2-month shoot in Morocco. I was there for 10 days. So, you know, I'm in charge of the book.
All right.
Not the film.
We'll keep that in mind. And we need to take a break to hear from our sponsors. So if you'll hang on just about 3 minutes, folks, and come right back. We got a lot more to talk about.
We'll finish the rest of your comments. And I have a couple of surprise pictures I want to show you all.
Oh,
so
yeah.
stay tuned.
Do you want to do it after the commercial?
After the commercial.
Okay.
People who like to read want to get their hands on books by Becca Jones.
Becca Jones, the breakthrough author who tells it like it is. It takes courage to tell a story when it reveals dark secrets. Becca Jones delves deep into the hidden world of sexual abuse. She tells what happened and also tells how she survived.
Meant to Be is much more than just entertaining. Meant to Be gives you a point of reference, hope to cling to, and becomes a guide for survival if you have suffered the same thing. Meant to Be, Becca Jones, a must-have.
Meant to Be is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites.
It's 1919. Back from the war in Europe, Eric Lasko returns to Floodwood Station, Ohio, the small coal mining town he calls home. There, he faces new foes. One poses a threat to his personal long-term relationship. The other is lurking in the adjacent Hocking Hills State Forest, a vicious, incredibly lethal beast driven by bloodlust. An 11-year-old girl and an old man have seen the creature, but no one believes the claims of a young child and a known drunk. When the first body is found, Eric, his father and brother, become suspects in his grisly death. To clear himself and his family, Eric must prove the beast exists. As the gruesome body count rises, the immigrant miners realize what's stalking their town. Every country calls it by a different name, but the creature is the same. Werewolf. Who is it? The residents reach a conclusion, but are they right?
Now on Kindle Vella. Paradise, My Prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise, My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Published by Fresh Ink Group, Paradise, My Prison is on Kindle Vella with 3 free episodes. Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes.
We're back.
We're back. And
So here's picture number 1. Remember last week, while we were doing the podcast, we were waiting for the birth of our great-granddaughter. And here she is, little Amelia. She's just so cute. And here is our grandson and his wife and baby Amelia. So
we're great-grandparents.
and she arrived finally.
Just before midnight. the night of the show, actually.
So George says spaghetti westerns were famous for looping. And Becca Jones says, I never know the ending for my books. Sometimes the ending surprises me, which Howard said it surprised him. And Joy Shelton York said, I've had endings in mind, but my characters had other ideas. Yeah, I know, exactly. And Joe Conjal has a question. Howard, when the studio makes a movie from your book, do you get a flat fee for that, or do you get a cut of the profits from the movie? Wouldn't that depend on the contract you had?
No, that's a very standard contract, and it's a very good question, but the answer might not be standard.
Okay.
You get a flat fee, and then you often get something called points. Points are the equivalent of profit participation. So everybody gets them, meaning the actors get them. Jonathan Rhys Meyers was in this film also, who did The Tudors. But here's the problem. Hollywood accounting is not something you want to be enamored with, because films, by their accounting, never seem to make a profit. So even the films that make tens of millions of dollars seem to have very high expenses. So the chances of getting the points, which is the profit participation at the end, and it's not only people like me. In fact, I just explained this to somebody yesterday. Here's a really better way to explain it. Think of all these TV series you see. Suddenly, the actors, especially the big name actors, are all producers. They're all executive producers. They're producers almost in every big series you see on Netflix, on commercial television, wherever you want. What's that about? That's because they're getting paid extra money up front to compensate for the fact that they're probably never going to get the profits. And there have been a few cases where very big Hollywood stars on very big films have sued the studios, claiming there were profits. And the stars have won in those cases. I think Scarlett Johansson was one.
I think so.
Disney over, I don't remember the film, and she won millions of dollars. Not that she needed the money, but I think for her, it's an issue of principle. You don't want to be screwed or taken advantage of by the entities. So you try to get as much money up front as you can, because the chances of getting it on what's called the back end of the profits are really small.
George Dismuke says, James Garner wrote an expose about Hollywood accounting.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because this has been a long and well-known problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that something I'm new to telling you. So, in fact, when I think about it, I assume there's going to be no back-end profits. So I'm looking to see what I'm going to get on the upfront amount.
Right.
We're talking to some people about doing a film of the Syrian sunset. In fact, I met with somebody Saturday, and I'm going to have breakfast with the same director tomorrow morning. But because it's very probably maybe more so than anything I've written, exactly topical, as I started to say before, not just the details of the Syrian civil war. But, well, we can go into this for a minute. If you remember, and I'm not a Republican or a Democrat on these kinds of issues, I'm just kind of straight. So Obama said we're going to draw a red line in the sand if Bashar al-Assad uses chemical weapons. A year passed. Assad dropped sarin on the rebels in East Damascus and killed 1,000 people. So now suddenly we're in this problem of what's Obama, what's the administration going to do? They wanted a consensus. They wanted the Brits to work with him to eliminate the chemical weapons, eliminate some of the helicopters, gunships that were dropping barrel bombs, which are the fertilizer bombs like Timothy McVeigh used on the FBI building. And Obama couldn't get a consensus because the Brits refused to follow Obama because they felt they had followed George Bush into Iraq, and Iraq was such a disaster. You know, we were all promised there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and there weren't in the end. So the Brits refused to follow Obama. Merkel didn't want to work with him because she felt there were so many Syrian refugees coming into Germany already that if they bombed the capability in Syria, the fields, we're not even talking about troops going in like in Iraq, but just sending cruise missiles to take out the military fields to allow the Syrian Free Army free reign to go and fight with Assad. But anyway, Obama backed down in the end. And Assad crossed his red line and he didn't do anything. So ultimately, Putin, who was building a naval base on the Mediterranean in Syria, expanded his military bases, took over the civilian airfield next to his naval base with Assad's permission, built huge new runways, brought in Russian bombers, and they had the excuse that they were going to bomb only ISIS. But in the end, they really weren't bombing ISIS. They were bombing the Syrian Free Army, and they allowed the repressive regime of Assad, who exists to this day, to remain in power. So because of that, if you're Putin and you see Obama backs down and the British won't challenge him and Merkel won't challenge him, what does he figure? He figures, hey, I'll go into Ukraine. These West are a bunch of weaklings. He turned out to be greatly wrong, though, when it came to Ukraine. Maybe the lesson was learned in the abandonment of the Syrian people. But so there's some film interest in this new book, too, because it's highly topical.
Yeah.
As to what's going on today. So I'm talking to a few people.
George Dismuke says, I'm supposed to be getting points from 3 different movies. They come to about 10 cents per quarter.
Right. It's not even worth the stamp, or now it's probably electronic deposit. But that's it. I don't expect ever to get profit points, so which helps me as an author, though, probably in this sense. When you sell film rights, they control the film, but you still own the book and control the book. You don't ever sell the book as part of the film. So the film helps sell more books. We're talking about the film today. Lots of people want to interview me because I have a film with Sir John Hurt and Jonathan Rhys Meyers, who the women like. He's kind of a sexy guy. So because of that, if you saw, she brought it up before, they're very cooperative, usually these relationships. The film people let me take the film poster, which is really well done, and put it on the front of the Kindle and the paperback without charging me. Just said, sure. It's cross-pollinations. I sell books. People will go to Amazon and rent the film. And people watch the film and they say, hey, I want to read the book to understand this thing a little better. So generally speaking, the relations are good because nobody expects to get points, as George is telling you, So it's not like suddenly you're in an uproar. But if you're Scarlett Johansson and they've cheated you out of tens of millions of dollars, maybe you want to do something about it. I just want to say thank you and here's the book.
And sell some books.
Yeah.
Beam Week says, hi, everybody. Deep discussion. I like that.
We do
yes,
too, Beam.
we do too, Beam. Now, do you want to have him read now before the next commercial?
We can do that.
Would you wanted
Whatever
to
you
read?
like. I thought I was looking at several sections, but I thought, here's my own copy. I thought I would read actually from the beginning because, as I said, this is a book about, I'm going to put my other light on. I hope it doesn't disturb the picture. Maybe it's better.
It is better.
We'll leave it on. And the Arab Spring, if people remember, which was the belief that liberal revolutions, democratic revolutions, would sweep across the Arab world, began in 2011. So let me read from the beginning of the novel. On March 21st, 2011, trying to hold on to hope that was vanishing like blue skies as a storm gusted in, Leila Wassef hurried towards the main square in Dara, Syria. The Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia had blown the winds of the Arab Spring, that's from North Africa, a seemingly impossible distance to Damascus. Snared by their satellite dishes, Al Jazeera television from Qatar gave voice to the voiceless. People spoke of the sweet fragrance of living without whispering, of an end to the secret police knocking on the doors at any hour, of some of their loved ones and neighbors whisked away over decades, emerging from the dark cells. A warm breeze lifted the ends of Layla's multicolored headscarf, and she brushed them defiantly from her face. With each step, electric fear jolted through her, and Layla hoped she would not run home. When she heard what happened to those Dara boys 10 days ago, she had fallen to the floor in her parents' house, cried helplessly, and could not move. Finally, 2 days later, she had slipped outside, far behind her two brothers, and, unseen, followed them halfway to the massing male crowd, turning back. What happened is that they didn't allow women to join in the demonstration until right now. That was part of the success of the revolution, the attempted revolution. At 32 and slight, Leila favored the Western dress of the middle class, black pants and a red floral blouse she had hunted for in the faraway stores of the capital to the north. As long as she could remember, even as a girl, she had dreamed of something more than marrying and pushing out children, but never could put both hands on what she wanted. So she acquiesced to becoming a school teacher. Her exasperated parents and furious mother ushered potential suitors into their mosaic-floored courtyard with its small trickling fountain. Like a horse's tail swatting at flies, she sent them scurrying. Lila preferred to sit in the house alone, reading and dreaming. She'd been certain those fresh winds would sweep away the grit and grime of Damascus. Everyone who wasn't too beaten down thirsted for change. Most of those who argued for the safety of the status quo were older and remembered too well the eccentricities of the father, the former president of Syria, Hafez al-Assad. They spoke of the 1982 massacre of 20,000 in rebellious Hama, 200 kilometers north of Damascus, only after looking to see who might be listening. So that's the introductory character, a woman who is a bit rebellious, who wants to do something more with her life than bear children, and has reluctantly become a teacher, not sure what she would do, gets caught up in the Syrian revolution, mostly because she looks like a spy that they want to infiltrate into Damascus in her place. They need a cover. So they find a young woman who looks like the spy they want to bring in. And Lila is this young woman. So, maybe it's karma, maybe it's everything happens for a reason, or maybe it's just randomness, that she just happens to look like that person. And that's the way I played it. And they pick her. And her life then is changed the way all our lives are changed in small moments when we meet our spouses or bear our children or start to write a book.
Cool. That was very good. All right. We need to take our last break here. And when we come back, we'll tell you all how to reach Howard. And
at least show the covers of some of his other books.
Talk
He's
about
got a
some
lot
of
of
the
other books.
So we'll be right back.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth?
Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than three-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
First, there was Siren Song, then Siren Song 2. Now comes The Siren Hunter, a continuing saga about Angie Holland and her never-ending battle with the mythological denizens that are not even supposed to exist. Is The Siren Hunter a conclusion to the undersea horror? Only the sirens know for sure.
The Siren Hunter, now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Or contact this podcast. The trilogy is complete.
Madison Jackson loved being a cop. A young girl is raped and murdered near Burnett Reservoir. Madison vows to get justice for the child. Madison travels to the heart of Mexican cartel country. She is kidnapped, tortured. Will Madison ever make it home? Justice by Kelly Marshall, only at Amazon.com.
And welcome back. And we've got another question for you. But first, I want to say thank you to everybody for your congratulations.
Yes.
Okay, Marjorie Deering said, did you have to pitch your books to the movie makers, or did they seek you out after reading your work, Howard?
A little bit of both. The Damascus cover, as we mentioned, was filmed many years after it was written. That was really a sort of wild coincidence. There was a director looking to do a Middle East picture. He thought he had funding for it. And he was talking about it to friends. And a woman friend of his happened to be an acquaintance of mine. And she said, oh, you ought to read Howard's book. It's on my shelf. Let me pull it down and give it to you. He read it and he said, I don't want to look at anything else. Let's go have coffee with him. I want to buy this. The Syrian Sunset's a little different. It has a little bit more interest because it's a new book and the politics are pretty much current. So there are various people, producers, directors a little bit, but discussions are preliminary. There's something I want them to do, and I spoke to a director about this a few days ago. There's a running joke in the novel about Tom Hanks, because one of the characters is a Russian oligarch who builds entertainment centers in Russia, which is what's going on now. They take some of the old movie theaters and turn them into large entertainment centers, which would always be like a mall for us. It's got an ice rink and a beauty salon and clothing stores with clothes appropriate for ice rinks. And so somehow I just kind of came up with this. And Tom, if you remember the film, one of his old film, Castaway, which when he was on the desert island with was it a basketball or a volleyball? I think it was a volleyball, Wilson. And if you recall, where does Tom Hanks work? Where does that film open? Some people remember, some don't. He works for FedEx. And the film opens in Moscow. And the plane that goes down that lands him on this deserted island is a FedEx flight. Because remember, he has all the packages and he opens them up, but he finally saves one to deliver. Of course, it turns out to be a beautiful woman. My life never quite works out that way. And so this oligarch says, I believe Tom Hanks as Saving Private Ryan, but I don't believe the great Tom Hanks working for FedEx. It could never happen. And so there's like a running gag through the novel about Tom Hanks. So we all want to go to Tom Hanks and see if he wants to play the character of the oligarch. You remember he did that film, The Terminal, where he was a kind of Eastern European Russian caught in a terminal. It was a Spielberg film, I believe. So the oligarch says he could do the same accent. He just has to change it a little bit to play me in the film. So it turns out, I know this director who knows Lorraine Bracco, if you remember from The Sopranos, and she recently did a Pinocchio with Tom Hanks, animated, just voices, because she has this great voice. So we want to talk to her and see if she'll talk to Tom Hanks and show him the book. So what are the chances on this? Small, but if you go to the theater and you see Tom Hanks in it, this is how it happened.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right?
Absolutely.
These guys are so big, they do what they want. And if it strikes them as interesting, they might do it, because it only takes them a couple months to shoot the film.
It's all about
or they tell you, so long, buddy. Nice try. But we'll see. And apparently George Clooney and his wife are very interested in Syrian refugees. And F. Murray Abraham, who's also an Academy Award winner, turns out to be of Syrian heritage. So there are a whole lot of people out there of substance who care about things beyond, showing up on the cover of People magazine. The Clooneys are serious people who put money into refugee work. Sean Penn's another one who's like that. There are a lot of people. They're not always public about it. Yeah. So because this is a book about a population that was abandoned, there are people who may come on our bandwagon. We'll just have to see.
Pretty exciting stuff. Oh, we've got another comment. Let me see. Oh, Becca says, dream big. You never know unless you go for it. That's absolutely right. Might as well go for it. Well, let me show you where you can get in touch with Howard. All right. His website is howardkaplanbooks.com, and that's HOWARDKAPLAN. I think y'all know how to spell books and .com. You can find him on Facebook on Howard Kaplan Author. On Instagram, it's Kaplan How. And his email, if you would like to email him and talk to him, is kaplanhow@ca.rr.com.
Just don't try to sell me crypto. It seems like all the scammers everywhere are trying to sell me crypto.
Oh, I think they're trying to sell everyone crypto. It's ridiculous, isn't it? All right.
These are reputable. I do not think these are reputable people.
No.
You're probably right.
Neither are the Nigerian princes who want to tell you that if you only give them $3,000, they will give you $50 million when their inheritance comes through. Okay, here's your second book. So let's go through this. Damascus Cover was his first book, which then became a major motion picture. And then his second book was the Chopin Express. And you want to tell us a little bit about that one?
We didn't touch on it too much, but That's the only one that's not a digital book. It's about a little bit more autobiographical about my experiences in Russia, but again, done as a novel.
In the Bullets of Palestine?
I have 3 novels. You're coming across them now that are about reconciliation between Arabs and Palestinians, Israelis and Palestinians. Because again, my parents came out of the Holocaust in Eastern Europe, and I'm interested in no minorities being seen as the other, and a realization that if you can't work together, you're all going to succumb, I think is that. So I wrote those 3 books. The first, which is Bullets of Palestine. They're all independent, though they are, they do have the same characters. Then To Destroy Jerusalem, and I'll tell you about Clive Cussler in a moment. And the last of those is The Spy's Gamble. So when the Damascus cover came out in my late 20s, I was invited at the Beverly Hilton Hotel to speak. There was 1,000 people in the audience to speak. It was a book and author, and Billy D. Williams was there, other people. And who am I seated next to but Clive Cussler, whose first book was just coming out called Raise the Titanic.
Wow.
And he became, a fabulously successful writer. One of these writers who in Dead still seems to be able to publish books. They just put his name on the cover. And he was the nicest person in the world. He lived in Golden, Colorado, and he would write to me handwritten letters on stationery. He had Clive Cussler stationery, but he would write by hand. And so he read the Damascus cover and he said, I want to give you a quote. Please use this if it can help you. Here's my agent's name. He was just, like a lot of really successful people, tremendously kind and warm. And not the kind of stereotype you might imagine.
It doesn't hurt to live in LA.
You do meet some people, although we're now in this new Zoom world. So I do a lot more Zooms than I do get on airplanes and speak to groups that way. So, but LA's, there are connections here.
For real. Okay, so Joe Conjal has a question. He says, Howard, I know you said your characters are fictional, set around real events. That being said, do you plot out the entire book ahead of writing, or do you work as a pantser or discovery writer?
I don't plan out the whole book because I think I'm lazy. I once went to the Screenwriters Guild, here we are in LA, and to listen to John Irving. John Irving is one of the giants of American literature. At that time, his first book, I think, or the first well-known book, was The World According to Garp, which was filmed by Robin Williams, and then The Cider House Blues. I think Michael Caine's in that. I can't remember who does that. And Tobey Maguire, I believe. And he's written maybe 20 novels, and quite a number of them have been filmed. One with Jeff Bridges called The Door and the Floor. He spends years plotting out every scene before he starts to write. He's the only person I know who actually, I don't know him, but who I've heard does that. But I think if you have that kind of patience, there's a lot to be said for plotting everything out. I seem not to have exactly that kind of patience, and I think most writers don't. But, the more you know in advance, the more coherent the book is likely to be. And he seemed to not have any lack of enthusiasm for the actual writing once he needed to start after all those years, literally, of plotting out every scene. So I think I should plot out more scenes, but I'm getting a little old to learn to do that.
Yeah, we're pantsers ourselves. It's like, yeah, we have a general idea of where we want to go.
Yeah, we know. Kind of what we're doing,
but
I think that's helpful. Look, let me tell it to you a different way. I started my career with a very big agent. His name was Scott Meredith. His clients included Norman Mailer, Arthur C. Clarke, Frank Herbert, Carl Sagan, the astronomer. And Meredith wrote a book called Writing to Sell. He was a very big liter agent, and he said there was something in common between most of the manuscripts he was sent as first novels that he couldn't sell. And what he said was, those books were series of events rather than a coherent story told around one central problem. So a series of events would be one of these things where you go to the movie and it ended and you don't know yet that it's over. You know, you figure like it should keep going because you're not clear enough. So unless you're, you know, an enormously talented stylist, if you just go here and do this and this and this and what you want to do, you end up with a series of events and not a novel that solves a central problem. So again, planning is valuable, even though we're all a little bit like to think we're so creative that we can just keep going from the seat of our pants.
There you go. So Howard, you, I know you're really busy with directors and, you know, trying to get things sold over into movies. Do you have anything else on the drawing board right now as far as,
you know, I've been a little remiss. I just came back literally last night from 3 days in New Mexico to visit old college friends. We went to Bandelier National Monument, where the Native Americans had lived in caves and there are ladders up to the caves. And I said, as soon as I get back, I'm going to start thinking about something new. But here I am talking to you and having breakfast again with the director tomorrow. So it seems like my word isn't terribly worth a whole lot. But I need to sit down. I have a file of notes, but I haven't really put them in any kind of sense at all. And I really need to do that. And, you know, I often have a thought, I don't know if I've ever written about this, but that is, people do things until they're wrong, and then they do them one more time. And I need the one more time at the moment. So pretty soon I have to get back to work.
That's good.
We'll have fun in the meanwhile.
There you go. There you go. Well, do you have any questions or anything?
Nope. I think we're good. It's been a really good interview, and we appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to put you back or over to the side here. Stay right where you're at. After the commercials come on at the end, stay right where you're at until we come back to you. And here we go. Whoop, there we go. Didn't lose you. That's part of that's a plus for tonight, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to remind everybody to join us next Wednesday live for Paul Rushworth Brown. And this Saturday for episode Rewind, CJ Peterson, right where you're watching right now, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time here in the U.S., wherever you're watching right now.
So Joe Conjal says, another great show. Enjoyed listening to you, Howard. Thanks to him, and as always, Joan and Rob. Thanks to you, our audience.
Yes.
George Dismuke says, break a leg, Howard. And Joy Shelton York says, great show, Joan and Rob. Thank you. And Paul Hollis says, great interview. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to you all.
That's for sure.
Yeah, we wouldn't have much of a show if we didn't have any listeners or viewers. And I think now, guys, we have over 33,000 downloads.
Heading to 34.
Very quickly heading to 34. So that's, to me, that's crazy.
All righty. Well, stay tuned to see how to get over to Voice of Indie podcast. And until next time.
That's all, folks.
Good night.
Live Every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen G's welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie, and you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.